It's really great to have you on MyFlora Fridays. You and I are pretty recently connected, and I've talked to you a couple times to learn a little bit about what you do and for you to ask me questions. And I got excited to bring you on because you're doing some incredible work. Not only do you have your own soil line, but you're doing some nonprofit work to educate and help lift the stigma that is so bound to cannabis. But you better than I know you. So would you mind telling everybody who you are, what you do, and what you brought you into the cannabis space?
Hi, thank you for having me on here. I'm Erick Engelhart, and I am the president of the Buttheadz Growers Club, and I own Butthead Soil. That's definitely been a passion of mine to be involved in cannabis. And my biggest thing about cannabis is stigma breaking. You know, I want to provide a world for my child that doesn't have that same stigma that I had to grow up in around cannabis, where it isn't treated like a medicine and all the amazing properties that it has.
Cannabis is just, it's an incredible plant and it's had such a really bad rap. And it's unfortunate that so many people still view it as such a terrible, bad drug,
Oh,
right?
it's crazy. I mean, they treat people like, oh, you can't be a professional, you can't be a good father, you can't be a great person if you're smoking cannabis. That stuff stinks. You must be a drug addict or something. That's ridiculous. Cannabis is a plant. It's an
Hmm.
herb. It's a natural thing that grows out of the ground. We're not over here cooking the plant and making it into something else. I mean, hell, all you do is dry it out and then you smoke it.
Yep. And that's fine to do with tobacco. Why not cannabis?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is misinformation. When it comes to stigma, a lot of people in our area, especially, they kind of look at cannabis like, oh, that's something bad. We don't want to be around those people. But what we've been trying to do with cannabis is trying to shine a different light on it by showing one, how cannabis is grown. I have a Butthead's Grow Shop here in Jackson, and I've had the pleasure of teaching people how to grow cannabis and showing people how cannabis works. I'll be honest with you, a lot of people thought cannabis was grown with a bunch of chemicals, and that's how we got high off of it, was the chemicals that we put into the plant. That's not true at all. It's natural. It's the way the plant's designed. You could grow it in cow shit and it would be just fine.
Yep. They don't call it weed for nothing. It grows well just about anywhere. It's incredibly resilient. You can draw, like if you forget to water it, it can get pretty dry before it will actually die. You can bring it back.
It's tough. It is a
Yeah,
tough plant.
it is a tough plant. And I always say it's easy to grow cannabis. It's harder to grow good cannabis. And it kind of depends on what your
Yes.
needs are, what you're looking to do. You can spend a lot of money, getting, various equipment and soil and nutrients and all kinds of accoutrements, or you can just stick it in the dirt and let it go, you know?
And that's the way I feel about growing cannabis. Like, we talked a little bit about my soil, the butthead soil, the whole purpose behind that. When I first started making soil, I used to do it in a little Rubbermaid tub. Actually, it was a big Rubbermaid tub, and I mixed different ingredients in it. And I remember being in there and get that stuff all up my arm and all over me because I didn't have a mixer. I did it all by hand, and I'd bag it in sandbags and I'd stick a little sticker on it and I'd tie a string around the top and I would sell my Butthead soil mix. And my whole mindset behind soil was, why is it that we buy soil from manufacturers that require us to add supplemental elements into the soil just so we can have a good soil base for our crops? I wanted to make a soil for people where they could just plant the seed in it and go. They don't have to switch soils. They don't have to use two different soils. They don't have to do all this crazy stuff because it doesn't make any sense. All they're doing is they're making it harder on the customer, especially if you're a new cannabis grower or new to growing, period. Some people I've noticed that get into growing cannabis, they've never grown anything. And they'll cannabis because they like smoking it, they're going to try growing it. And what's interesting about cannabis, I always tell people growing cannabis is a gateway drug to gardening. It's everybody I know that starts growing cannabis, they start doing other stuff too.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm a terrible gardener, and I talk about it all the time. It's funny because I'm labeled as a plant person. Really, I'm a population geneticist. I could do what I do with any sort of organism, but I'm labeled as a plant person, specifically a cannabis person, but I've done work on cacti as well. But I'm a terrible gardener. I kill stuff, I have house plants and I do okay with them, but I do kill them as well. And I've grown cannabis, but I'm like one of those people who's like set it and forget it. If I have to pay attention to it, if I have to do stuff to it, then it's probably not going to make it. And when I was in Colorado, we had home grow, and the first couple of years, my son took care of them because I wasn't. He'd make sure they had water and nutrients and stuff. And then we built a greenhouse, and it was really shitty. And the plastic, that we tarp kind of thing that we had
Hmm.
over it, we get really high winds in the Front Range. And so that like ripped off. And so we ended up tearing that down, and I bought like a proper sort of a hoop house, and that worked really great because it sheltered the plants from the hail and the wind and stuff like that. We did have like a floor fan in there that would,
Hmm.
keep the airflow going. And then when the temperatures started to drop, we had like a small heater in there, just a regular like indoor heater, nothing super fancy that, I'm surprised we didn't electrocute ourselves, but like whatever. And then I put in a drip system to make sure that the plants got water. And like every couple of weeks, I'd be like, oh shit, I should probably give the plants some, I don't know, meal or something. But that was it. And my plants grew really well. I didn't have any problems. I got pretty good yields, pretty good height. They were all taller than me, probably 6 to 8 feet tall, with, colas like that, like not bad
Yeah.
for somebody who doesn't do anything. And so that's why I tell people like it can be as hard or as easy as you want it to be. You can spend a lot of money or you can spend a little bit of money. It just depends what you're looking to do. Are you looking for huge yields? Then you're going to need to put in some more effort. But if you're just growing for pleasure, you can really just, take it easy. If you're doing it indoors too, like you're limited with space and things like that. But it's a fun plant to grow for sure. And now I live in New Jersey. We're not allowed to do home grow. So that sucks. And I live on the shore. So we have by the Pine Barrens, we have really sandy soil. So it's where I don't even know if cannabis would grow well in this soil just because it is so sandy. But I don't know much about soil. You should teach us about soil.
Yeah. So when I made my soil, my whole mindset behind soil was how can we make soil more sustainable? Peat moss soils, a lot of peat moss soils are mined. They're mined out of peat moss bogs. And coco core is a recycled resource that's made from the coconut core, the coconut husk.
Like
What
that
we
hairy stuff that you pull.
because when they do is they process, the fruit of the coconut, and then the excess, which is used to be just waste or trash. Now we turn that into soil. So we patented a process with the coconut core where we remove the pith out of the core. When we take the pith out of the core, it drains better. It's more fibrous. It doesn't have that water holding capability like it does whenever you buy it without having the pith separated. And what we've done with that is we've made a soil that doesn't require perlite. It doesn't have to have perlite in it for it to drain, for it to breathe. Using the fibrous core and using the compost, and we put rice hulls in it. The compost that we add into the soil, that's actually the nutrient base for the coco core. The compost that we add into the soil is a natural compost that we age 3 years. And this compost, we've learned after aging it 3 years, has a better microbial benefit to the plant. It benefits the plant better by how it feeds the plant, how the plant works into the system.
Yeah, because I've been talking to some people who make or experts in microbes and um, how microbes can benefit your soil, how you can introduce microbes into your soil. You can buy like various concoctions and inoculations, or you can do compost teas and things like that. So and we have to do this because we're not growing in natural soils, right? But the natural soil that you find outside your, in your forest or whatever, those are all teeming with microbes. But, when we buy it from the store, it doesn't have those beneficial organisms already added. So you have to end up, I don't know what the word is, remediating your soil to get it to
Yeah.
where you get the
So your plant will have to break those mineral additives down so the plant can uptake them nutrients. So when we use compost instead of mineral additives, it's already broken down. It's ready to be taken up by the plant.
nice. In different areas, well, like obviously we're in the United States, there's different soils in different areas. And we know that cannabis isn't incredibly plastic, meaning that it changes its expression, its phenotype based on its environmental inputs. Like you can start with the same genetic, like you and I could take a clone from the same mother, take it home, stick it in the soil, and we would end up with incredibly different phenotypes just because of our level of, growing capabilities and whatever, nutrients we put in whatever kind of soil it is, whatever kind of nutrients we add to it, water, light, all of that stuff. And so there's different areas of the country and like what would you say to people who are like, well, I just want to stick it in the dirt or dig out some soil from my backyard and use that to grow it? Like,
When you're planting a plant outdoors so here in Missouri, that's where I'm from, we have really clay soil. It's very dense. And if you try to plant directly into the clay soil, it doesn't want to grow very well because the roots can't spread out very well. It doesn't breathe very well. Water doesn't flow through that clay very well. And it causes the plant to be stunted if someone plants directly into the clay. So here in Missouri, what we do is we'll dig out a hole around where we're going to plant. So say I'm going to plant a pot about this size. I would dig out a hole this size around that plant,
mm-hmm,
dig it down, and then fill that full of good soil, and then plant the plant inside that soil around the soil I brought in. So the
mm-hmm,
butthead soil that I would put around it would help that plant inoculate into the dirt around it because we add mycelia to our soil and that helps build a mushroom network that helps connect it into other parts of the soil so it can keep growing.
okay. Okay, yeah, mycelium. So that's an interesting topic too. I was just on I don't know, it's probably a grow group on Facebook or something, and somebody was asking, "Hey, what's all this fuzzy stuff all over my soil? Is it bad?" And then, the chat went on talking about mycelium and how that's good. And can you explain what mycelium is, how it works, why it's good, and what it
Yeah, so mycelium, growing mushrooms are very, very interesting. Fungus is definitely very interesting. I have had the pleasure of working with it with soil. I've also learned how to grow mushrooms like shiitake or turkey tail mushrooms at home. That's been a pleasure learning how to do my own spore prints, learning how to do my own mushroom mycology with that stuff. Mushrooms, when you're talking about mycelia and soil, they help the roots connect to the food sources that the roots need to find. And that helps build healthier roots. Also, mycelia will break apart structures like soil or substrate to give the roots passageways to grow through too. So mycelium roots are kind of they're symbiosis. I mean, if you think about the old growth forest, in the old growth forest, you take a deep breath, you smell that mycelia smell in the forest. That's decomposition of the leaves of the wood of the stuff in the forest. All that stuff works together. That's why the trees grow so well. That's why the plants look so good in the forest. They don't need anybody to feed them. They're getting food on their own. And it's just that natural process. With the butthead soil, our mentality by adding mycelia, adding natural compost is to build as much of a natural ecosystem for your plants so you have a foundation to build from. Using living soil is more sustainable because you can reuse that soil instead of having to always throw it out like rock wool or something like that where you got to grow in it every time.
Hmm. Yeah. And so there is good fungus and there is bad fungus, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, I've heard people say that if you get mushrooms in your, in your pot that your plant's sitting in or whatever, that's an indication of healthy soil. But I feel like there's a fine line between, it being a sign of healthy soil and it being a sign of an infestation of maybe some fungus you don't want.
You make a great point there. There is definitely bad funguses that we can get on the plant, like septoria that can get on the leaves and it can cause the plant to spread a fungus throughout the plant that causes it to get sick and die. Funguses can be bad, but funguses can be good. It's just like bacteria on the human body. Some bacteria is bad. Of course, it makes us sick, but then there's some bacteria that helps us fight off infection, just like penicillin is a good fungus. The whole idea behind mycelia in the soil is we inoculate the soil with natural soil mycelia that's natural to Missouri. The reason why we do that is because we found that using that natural mycelia that you would find naturally here in the soil in Missouri works well with plants and animals, around the area. You're not seeing mycelia spreading that's going to cause a problem that's going to infest a lot of things in your area, especially if you're planting it directly in the ground. That's why we use natural mycelia in this area.
So, like natural versus something that's introduced or non-native that could
Yes.
potentially become invasive.
Yes, this is a non-invasive mycelia that we use. And the reason why we do that is because we don't want to cause any kind of problem with someone's ecosystem with their plants, especially when you're planting in the ground. Like I said, if you're digging out a hole in your yard, planting like a fruit tree or a cannabis plant. I plant cannabis plants outdoors myself. I'll dig a hole out and I'll plant them up, and I'll have a few little mushrooms popping out of the soil there, but it really just stays locally around that plant. And
Hmm.
it's just giving it that those mushrooms are helping feed that plant and give those plant the mycelia network it needs to grow into the soil.
So, if you get mushrooms popping out of your soil, should you pick them or should you just leave them alone? I don't
You
mean
know,
eat them. I mean,
yes, leave them alone. What they do is when the mushrooms come up, they'll crown and they'll drop their spores and they'll grow more mushrooms. And that just helps keep your ecosystem in your pot going to keep away bad fungus and keep the good fungus there.
hmm. And so mushrooms, for the most part, just let them go and just they're doing good things for your
Yeah,
soil and your plant. Okay.
just eat
Yeah.
random mushrooms.
Yeah, don't eat random mushrooms. I took a
Yes.
mycology class and my professor said all mushrooms are edible once. At least he was very adamant. Like, if you're not a mycologist and you're not very well versed in being able to identify mushrooms, don't just go foraging for mushrooms because there are lots of mushrooms too that look a lot alike. One's poisonous and one is not. And, he's like, if you do, keep at least one with a note to say this is what I ate so that if you
Hmm.
do get sick or, or in trouble, then the medical team will know exactly what you ate so that they can treat you correctly, right? Same thing with like snakes. If you get bitten, take a picture so that they know what they're treating.
Absolutely. Because then they're just guessing. They don't know what antibodies to give you to help treat you for what you got.
Yeah, it's a really good idea just not to eat random things that you
Yes,
don't
absolutely.
know
Ask a professional before you eat
right?
random mushrooms.
Um, One of my favorite movies is Into the Wild. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's about a guy who basically like he goes to college
Yes,
and then he just goes out. He leaves his
in
car.
Alaska.
Yeah, he goes off grid. He just like
That's a
mm,
true story.
it is a true story, and
Yeah.
he hitchhikes around, and then he ends up in Alaska, and he ends up getting stranded on a school bus. He can't get
Hmm.
across, so the river got wider, and he couldn't get across, and so he was stuck. and he had a book to identify plants. And so he was picking the plants and eating the edible ones. And peas. So the pea family, a lot of them look really similar. And there was two very, very similar peas, and he was picking the wrong one and eating it. And you don't get sick from it, but what that particular pea does is it shuts down your ability to digest anything. So even if he had food, like if he was able to catch a fish or, shoot a deer or whatever, it wouldn't matter because his body had lost the ability to digest anything and
Wow.
he ended up dying. And yeah, so I taught my son at a very early age, do not eat anything in the pea family. This is how you identify anything in the pea family. Don't eat it because they're very problematic. Even though peas, you can eat peas, but they got to be the right kind of peas. And if you don't know your peas well enough, then don't eat them. So those are the kinds of things. Like botanicals are so interesting, right? Cannabis being one of my favorite, of course, for multiple, multiple, multiple reasons. But yeah, I was never a plant person. I kind of got pushed, shoved, kicking and screaming into learning about plants. But just they're just so interesting. And like things that I think about, you know, people love cannabis. People love, the therapeutic capabilities of cannabis. People love the effects that it can give them and help them with, various relaxation and things like that. But it is a plant, and lots of plants have the capacity to not do nice things. They're allergens, they have terpenes that can be irritants, right? You can get contact dermatitis, or they can be caustic, they can burn your skin. And so it's really funny that lovers of cannabis kind of have this idea that cannabis can do no wrong, it can't harm you, nobody's allergic to cannabis can't kill you. And while that is true, there are quite a few people that are allergic to cannabis, like, they have to wear sleeves and stuff if they're working in the garden because they get, irritation. I'm super allergic to cannabis pollen, like super duper wicked allergic. And some of the terpenes I'm allergic to as well. So, not sure where I was going with that.
Oh, I'm allergic to cannabis too. I wear this hoodie. I have to wear it when I'm trimming my plants because if I get it on my skin, I'll be itching like crazy. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it just causes me to itch like crazy. And, I just have to wear sleeves or I have to wear a hoodie when I'm in there. If I'm in there, the pollen, it gets me going. I start sneezing. I have to take a Benadryl usually if I go in there, if it's in full flower. But even though I'm allergic to it too, I still love playing with the plant. I just have a good supply of allergy medicine and I wear sleeves when I'm in there. But you learn how to deal with it, just like anything else. Growing up in Missouri, we have a lot of natural allergens like hay fever and stuff like that. They get started because we cut a lot of hay down in the springtime or the fall time.
So, cannabis in Missouri, are there a lot of producers and dispensaries and stuff out there, or is it like what's the sitch out there?
So there is quite a few different cultivars and dispensaries out here in Missouri. But Missouri done a really good job of keeping the licenses to a strict minimum. Like Oklahoma, they had just a surplus of people with licenses, growers and dispensaries. Missouri's done a really good job of having select cultivation facilities in certain areas so there's not a surplus, and then select dispensaries in certain areas so you're not having so much, competition between dispensaries.
Mm-hmm.
So they only allow so many licenses. So the market has stayed pretty well. I think the market stayed good in Missouri. I mean, you haven't seen a huge price drop like you have in Colorado or even in California where the prices really just bottomed out in some areas. You're still seeing a good price for craft cannabis here in Missouri.
Gotcha. I was in Missouri, St. Louis,
Yeah.
at a conference, a cannabis conference. The importance of science communication, and which is also super important in the cannabis space. Like there is so much misinformation and uh just things that people um don't know or don't know how to find like real uh information because there's so much out there on the internet. Every single day when I'm scrolling the internet, I'm like, where do these people come up with this stuff? Like that's not correct. And words like indica and sativa that have double meanings, right? We've got indica
Hmm.
sativa morphology, and then we have indica and sativa effects. Those two things have nothing to do with each other, or so we think. But, when you're talking to a consumer and they say indica and sativa, they're not talking about what the plant looked like because they don't care, right?
Hmm.
They wouldn't have seen it grow, and it really doesn't matter. That's not what they're interested in. If you're talking to a cultivator, though, they might be talking about how the plants look, but they also might be talking about the effects that the plant might have because they're growing for a particular purpose. So there's like, yeah, communication in science for cannabis is super important, and accuracy, precision, and being very specific about what you're talking about in the cannabis space is, we've got hemp, we've got hemp derived, we've got now we've got all kinds of words or things with hemp attached to it when hemp is not that. So yeah, it gets really confusing in this industry for sure.
100%. And being able to explain scientific information to people that don't understand cannabis also helps fight the stigma behind cannabis, because a lot of people, they have a stigma for cannabis because they don't understand it. They don't understand what it's capable of, what scientific properties and benefits that it can do. I go to the symposium, and I'm a part of the symposium at SIU every year. And that symposium, the people that show up, you spoke at it once. I remember watching you speak, and it's just incredible watching so many amazing people with so much scientific knowledge, and sharing that with the public. A lot of people just don't understand the value of cannabis and where it is going to go in the future.
Mm-hmm. You should talk more about that. So, I know that you are at a university, not necessarily teaching, but that the university that you're at does have a program that does give education on the plant, not necessarily the THC type, but the hemp type, right? Well, and it doesn't matter. It's all the same species, just bred for different purposes. So tell us about the school that you work at and what you're doing over there.
So I work at SEMO University, and one of the things that we have experienced here is we are learning about hemp. And the hemp program that they have here at SEMO is learning about the attributes of the plant, how beneficial the plant can be to the soil, how fast it can grow. We did a hemp study last year. I'll send you some pictures of that. But the hemp study from last year that we did with SEMO and Bear, that was super awesome. We grew a bunch of hemp in a field, tried different phenotypes of hemp, seen what hemp was more viable, what grew better, what was stronger, what handled the stresses of the soil better. Because, like I said, we have more of a sandy clay soil here. So we wanted to see what could taproot deep and be strong. All the genetics that we grew in that hemp study these were all just natural hemp. We didn't, none of it was made genetically like through the CRISPR method. All the hemp was made just through natural breeding. So
Hmm.
they were actually capturing seeds and capturing pollen and cross pollinating and capturing seeds from the plants at the hemp study. So it was very interesting to be a part of that.
Yeah, so just to clarify, there's actually no CRISPR modified cannabis or hemp on the market. People think that there's all kinds of genetically modified cannabis. There isn't. There have been a couple of groups that have used CRISPR to modify cannabis, but it's not available on the market anywhere. You can't, like, if you've got seeds in your hand, I can guarantee you they haven't been tinkered with in that capacity. A couple of folks have been able to use CRISPR to knock out chlorophyll production. So you end up with a white plant that's totally not even helpful or useful in any way, shape, or form, because if a
Yeah.
plant doesn't have chlorophyll, it can't make food and it's not going to live, right? So but it is a proof of concept potentially that you can use CRISPR to edit the genome. But yeah, as far as CRISPR or genetically engineered cannabis, it doesn't exist. So, in hemp type cannabis is everything, any cannabis plant that produces less than 0.3% total THC. So that includes THCA and delta 9 THC. And so that includes CBG type cannabis, which is cannabigerol, CBD type cannabis, which is cannabidiol, and your fibrous type hemp and your grain or oil seed type hemp. And so I presume that's what you were growing. Were you growing like, because you're growing outside, most cannabis that you're going to grow, whether it be hemp, CBD or CBG or THC type plant, you're going to generally grow it more inside. Whereas I feel like most of the fiber or grain types are grown more outside. So, what kinds of genetics were you growing? How many types did you have, and what did you find out?
So we were growing outside. We were doing this test with at Midwest Organics. That's the my business partner that I do my soil together with. And what we were doing is they were testing out the different types of hemp that would be more viable than the hemp that's being grown now. The problem with hemp seed is a lot of hemp seed that's grown commercially outdoors, it's not all, like, all the seeds aren't germinating. The germination rate is very low. They're having a big problem with, like, oh, half the crop's not even germinating whenever they're planting these hemp seeds. So these hemp plants that they were planting with Bear, they were testing out to see how well the stalks grew, the fiber that was growing on them. These plants were definitely not for flower, not for consumption. They were
Okay.
for industrial use. They were the thick stalks, the real fibers that would cattail out, the really strong plants. It was insane how large these hemp plants can get so fast. They don't have a long turnaround time to grow. And it
Mhm.
was interesting to be a part of that study with the university and with Bear, because that was an interesting opportunity to be a part of.
Yeah, I think there needs to be more of these studies. And I know more universities are getting involved because, hemp is legal at the federal level. So that allows, universities to have these kinds of programs. Still no touchy on the THC type cannabis. But I feel like we were talking about different kinds of soils in different kinds of regions of the country. So, what we've found is that, for example, if you live in New Jersey or if you live in Florida and you purchase seed from, let's say, Oregon CBD, which obviously is in Oregon, and they have seeds that were developed in Oregon, or Atlas, which is in California, when you bring them over to New Jersey or to Florida and grow them, they're going to perform incredibly differently. And a lot of times they end up going over that threshold, which is devastating for the farmer because when they go over, the rules are is that you have to destroy everything. You've just lost your whole crop for the season. And so I think and this is true for seeds that are on the market that are not cannabis, like you go to the Home Depot and you get some tomato seeds, you flip that seed pack over, it's going to tell you what seed zone these tomatoes will grow well in. And so you have to know your seed zone. And if you're buying tomatoes that are not well suitable to your area, it'll tell you, right? So I feel like we need that for cannabis so that if you're in Florida, you know what kinds of seeds to buy because they're suitable for X, Y, and Z seed zone.
Absolutely. And that's why we were testing it in here in the Midwest, because this is such a huge agricultural area that grows corn, soybeans, a lot of different crops like that. We have the capability, the fields to grow large crops of hemp. I don't know if you ever heard of Hemp for Victory back in World War II. Missouri, Kentucky, Illinois, these areas here were huge hemp producers during the war. And I know that that's why we were testing that out, the seeds out in this area, to see how they did in this climate zone.
Yeah, but we need to share that information, right, among everybody. So I know you run a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, which we'll talk about, but I'm also
Yes,
part of a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization called the Agricultural Genomics Foundation, and we've actually set up a program that farmers can join where we basically have a list of seeds that they can choose from to grow and then take data for us no matter where they are in the country so that we can start to tease apart, okay, you're in upstate New York, you're in Missouri, you're in New Jersey, how do these the same seed type, if we've got a list that you can do, so how do these same seed types perform in different areas, because I don't think that there is a large countrywide collaborative effort to really dial in to the geographical regional differences and really compare apples to apples. We can't just say, oh, this seed performed like this here and this seed performed. If they're not the same seed type, then those are not comparable, right? So everybody needs to be growing the same thing so that we can compare, Fanola to Fanola, or, Papa Smurf to Papa Smurf, or whatever, so that we can actually compare the differences in the different regions and say, okay, so this happens in this area and this happens in this area. It's so, I know there was a study out of Cornell that they wanted to see, is it genotype or is it environment that leads to differences? Like which one has the larger role? And they had two different areas to compare. And they grow two different strains, 100 plants each in these two different areas. And the conclusion was is that genotype plays a larger role than environment. But I'm like, well, number one, you only use two strains. And number two, these two planting areas were 50 miles apart. Is that really a difference in environment? I'm like, I don't think so. So I wasn't super impressed with the outcome of that study, but it gives us a sort of an idea of what we need to do in order to tease that question apart. And I can't see it working any other way other than to do a gigantic collaborative effort among multiple agricultural schools and or through organizations like Agricultural Genomics Foundation. But what does your 501c3 do?
So our 501c that we do more with food insecurity and knowledge on gardening. What we try to do is we try to break the stigma towards cannabis by running community gardens in local towns and areas around. So what we do is we run different community gardens in different towns, and they're all ran by cannabis friendly people. And what the whole purpose of that is to not only show people how people like us are professionals, we're happy to volunteer. We're here to help the community doing all that great stuff, even though we're 420 friendly. Also, we're teaching people. We have cannabis classes where we have meetings every 2 weeks and we have classes. Just like we had a guest come down and do tissue culture. Since he came down, taught about tissue culture, we were able to do an intro to tissue culture class. That's just one of the many classes that we've done. This is a great opportunity for people in the public that want to learn about cannabis because cannabis has been illegal forever. And a lot
Mhm.
of people hadn't had the opportunity to learn. Even people that went to college 20 years ago, they didn't have the opportunity to learn about cannabis back then. And this is an opportunity for them to hear from different people. We have guest speakers that come in. We've had people from SIU come up and talk to the class, stuff like that. It's awesome to be able to reach out to the community and teach that knowledge about cannabis in a friendly setting where people are just spending time together, hanging out, but we're all trying to learn. And we're all a bunch of growers usually that are at those meetings. And with our knowledge of growing cannabis, we take that same knowledge and put it into the community gardens because, as you know, cannabis grows a lot like a lot of other vegetables and plants. We've learned about growing other plants. We have master gardeners that help us, that come help us with community gardens as well. Taught a lot of different people, even taught me a lot about other plants, different kinds of things like how cucumbers grow different than other cucumbers and stuff like that. And we've planted up. Last year, we donated thousands of pounds of food to local food banks. It was a great opportunity to help out the community when people were struggling with food. I mean, we I know we helped out a lot with feeding those people that were struggling with food and giving them nutritious food instead of just canned food. This is regular garden variety vegetables that are grown. We're growing them in natural soil. But my Butthead soil, we donate the soil to the community garden. And that's something that we do. We also donate soil to different colleges and different groups to help promote gardening and learning how to grow organically. With the community garden, when we donate that soil, you know that the vegetables that are grown in that soil are safe to eat. We have all of our soil tested. Everything's great. We don't use harmful pesticides. We don't use harmful herbicides in the soil or anything. We're using just natural methods, natural fertilizer, and we have great results out of our garden beds.
And so is that those classes and those meetings, are they at the university that you're at?
No. So The classes that we have, we actually do those at another nonprofit. SEMO Pets is a local nonprofit humane society. We have our classes there. We rent out their conference room and we have them back there. Our goal is to eventually raise enough money where we could have a learning center where we could have classes at and then have a food bank as well.
Nice. So for the folks who don't know, I worked at the Denver Botanic Gardens and they had several programs and and lectures and things talking about food deserts and community gardens, you know, because in Denver there's not a lot of room to have your own garden, especially for people who live in apartments and things like that, but they want to have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, but in a city, you know, there's not a lot of supermarkets. It's kind of 7-Elevens and little bodegas and things like that. Where not a lot of access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And so can you talk about what a community garden is and how to get involved and or participate in a community garden? Because I think it's a super interesting concept and I don't think a lot of people know about them.
So if anyone's interested in participating in the community gardens here in Missouri that we're working on right now, you can go to www.buttheadsgrowersclub.com and we have opportunities there to sign up and get involved in your community gardens. But there's also community gardens in your local areas too. And a lot of these community gardens maybe were maintained by people from the past, and some of them have been neglected or abandoned because a lot of the newer generation people just weren't into gardening. A lot of people didn't have the knowledge of gardening, like our grandparents and parents before us did. The thing with community gardens is, if you see a local community garden or community garden that is being neglected or abandoned, ask about it, look into it. They may be needing volunteers to be involved. The Buttheads Growers Club, the big mission behind it is as a 501c3, we're able to work together and raise the money and the benefits that we need to put into these community gardens. A lot of times, like for instance, here in Cape Girardeau, we have 16 garden beds at one location. We have 8 at another location. The city does not pay for the maintenance of those garden beds. They do not pay for the boards. They do not pay for the plants, the equipment, the water hose, the timer, any of the stuff that's used to maintain those garden beds. That's all done by the Buttheads Growers Club. That is what we do as a 501c3 that helps out the community so much is we're able to help these gardens reach better levels than they were before and get the funding they need to be able to help the people in the community.
But what is a community garden? You know, there's playground areas in cities, but instead of a playground, it's like a garden area, and multiple people have either their own little plot within the garden or each other tends like you help other people do their gardens. Like, can you talk about what it is
Yes,
exactly?
yes. So there's different types of community gardens. The one that you were talking about where everybody has their own little plot, that's one where they you can rent a section of the garden and you take care of that section. What we found is with our gardens that we do, instead of us renting to the public and letting people take care of it, the club itself does the main maintenance of the garden. The garden's open to the public. People can come to the garden whenever and pick vegetables and stuff like that. But as far as the maintenance of the garden, we found that if the group as a collective is maintaining the garden's growing better, being taken care of better than depending on a bunch of different people's schedules. Maybe they forget, maybe they're out of town on vacation, they can't water. And sometimes miscommunication happens with those gardens where they get overgrown or people aren't taking care of them. These gardens that we do, we're maintaining them. We're making sure that they're picked. That way they're presented, they're ready for the public. We have people that come through there all the time from kids, Boy Scout groups, school kids. We have, different kinds of people that come pick vegetables. It's really awesome that to see our senior community how much it really benefits them. We have a lot of little old ladies that come out and pick a lot of radishes and different carrots and vegetables. And they tell me how nice it is as they are on a fixed income that they're able to come and get these vegetables. And them old ladies, they don't have the capability to maintain a garden. It's too hard
Right.
for them. I love gardening. It's not a big deal for me to be out there. I would be doing it if I wasn't doing that. That's my passion. I love doing that. And a lot of the people in the club are too. And that's our way of giving back and fighting the stigma behind cannabis. As I said before, we're giving back to the community. We're doing all this stuff and we're fighting the stigma that's built around what laziness. They say cannabis makes people lazy. You're not going to do anything. You're just going to sit on the couch or whatever. That's ridiculous. I smoke cannabis. I work very hard. So that's such a false statement to say that, the stigma behind cannabis. And that's what we're fighting as well.
And so if somebody wants to join the setup that you have, do you sign up and then pay like a monthly fee to be part of the community of that garden? Or do you charge like an entry fee? Like if you want to come pick vegetables, it's $5 at the door. Like, and then obviously you need money to keep the garden running. Where does that come from?
So the money, if you want to be a club member, it's $10 a month or $100 a year. That's very minimal. That money just goes straight to the garden and helps put forth the like the boards and stuff we need. We do raffles and different kinds of events. We have this big fundraiser coming up. We do this every year. This fundraiser definitely helps fund the local gardens, the SEMA 420 Fest that we're doing. We work with our groups to help coordinate how we're going to be maintaining the garden and everything. So we don't have too many people working in the morning and not too many people in the afternoon or maybe on Mondays, but no one's showing up on a Friday to water. So there is that organization that is involved in this too.
Do you grow cannabis in your community garden, or is it just strictly fruits and vegetables and the
Just
cannabis
strictly, yes, just strictly
side
fruits
piece?
and vegetables. Yes. So you were saying earlier, you said you imagine a park. So one of our gardens actually is there's a playground right there, a pavilion where people can have, birthday parties, etc. And then we have the community garden with 8 garden beds and it has 8 fruit trees and it has a little shed there that holds the gardening supplies. And
Hmm.
it just looks beautiful. You have those plants and kids can come down there and pick vegetables. There's no fee to go pick vegetables from the gardens. They are completely free. I don't want to see somebody that can't eat a tomato because they can't afford it. There's people that can't afford it. I want to be able to help them. And
Yeah.
especially now more than ever. The money raises all donations. You would be surprised how many people in the community want to see this happen, want to help out the community. And that's why we've been able to do what we have is local businesses and local people that have donated money and to help build this nonprofit to where it is today.
Isn't it a shame that so many parks and open areas and even, the area on the sides of streets, those spaces should be, fruit trees and things like that where people can just have access to food instead of ornamental plants that just look pretty and just don't serve any purpose. Well, I mean, obviously birds love it and squirrels love it, but they could love fruit trees and other things as well.
Absolutely. It's a missed opportunity, that's for sure.
Yeah. The access to, I feel like, gardening is, like I said, I'm not good at it. In New Jersey, we can't have home grow because they think that if people can grow at home, then nobody will visit the dispensaries and they'll lose out on all their tax money, right? There's a ton of states that have home grow, and the dispensaries are doing just exactly the same as they do here in New Jersey. And what I always think about is just because you can or are allowed to doesn't mean you can. People are limited on space, they're limited
Mhm.
on a skill. Like, not everybody can grow, not just their own food, but cannabis. So even if they allow home grow, doesn't mean that everybody's going to start growing their own because a lot of people can't because they suck at it or they don't have the space or they don't have the money. And so there are limitations to being able to grow. Plus, like when you have a home grow, you have a plant limitation. Like you can't grow 20 cannabis plants or 30 cannabis plants. So you end up with, 6 strains. You're going to get real tired of that real fast, right?
Yeah.
If you only had 6 types of food to eat, you would get real tired real fast and you'd want to
Yeah.
go and seek out something else somewhere else, which, and then concentrates and, edibles and things like that. Like sometimes you'll go to the store, It's like if you're growing tomatoes, it doesn't mean you're never going to buy tomatoes from the supermarket. What if your tomatoes are not ripe yet? You still need the tomatoes.
Or a different phenotype or variety of tomato. Maybe you want a
Right.
slicer.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
for sure.
yeah, I mean, and with gardening, like you just said, some people just don't have the skill to do it. And when we as cannabis growers, we have that skill, we have that passion. That's why we want to use what our talent is to help break that stigma. That's our way of breaking the stigma. And what we hope to show is we hope to show those naysayers and people that frown on cannabis, like look at us. We're out here, we're not selling weed, we're not hurting people, we're not trying to take advantage of anything. We're taking our time volunteering it, growing these vegetables and helping feed people. And it's an awesome opportunity. My dream eventually, I hope someday that I could do a community garden with cannabis. That is a dream. I've talked to people about it. Right now, of course, it's not legal. But even if you did it in a gated community garden where it was closed at night and it was only open during certain hours, and people that were, like we said, elderly, cancer patients, people that don't have the money to go to the dispensary, because especially at this time, your insurance does not pay for your cannabis. You're
Right.
paying for that out of your paycheck. And right now, every dollar you make is needed for something. Money's tight right now. And if cannabis could be a community garden, people are like, oh, they would take advantage of it. There is not anybody in the world that's getting cannabis or using cannabis that's not needing it.
I think a cool model, and I think there might even be some around maybe for hemp, like for CBD type flower, but like the pick your own. So like you know how you can go to like a blueberry farm or a strawberry farm or an apple orchard and you can pick your own. So they give you a basket of a certain size that you pay for, and then you fill up that basket, and then you get to take that home. So like they could have that for cannabis where, you get like a little jar or whatever, and it has instructions in it. You go and you fill up your jar, and then you take it home and you follow the instructions for the drying and curing process.
We have so many clones that we can make from cannabis. It's not hard to propagate, especially if you know how to do it. And we do a Cans for Clones program here with the Buttheadz Growers Club where people will donate canned food items and we'll donate cannabis clones or hemp clones. And that's something that we've done before, given out to medical patients. Somebody wants to learn how to grow, they got a medical grow license, but they have trouble starting the seeds. Well, here's this clone, you get you started and here's some canned food. We didn't trade any money, and that canned food goes to help them feed people. It would be amazing to be able to give cannabis away to people that needed it. I mean, I could grow enough cannabis in a community garden that would help tons of people, more than people could even realize. And people would volunteer probably to even come trim it and help take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could set it up very similarly to your community garden where you've got people who are skilled growing and taking care of the plants and then dispensing that to the public. You quickly mentioned that you have master growers that help out. Can you talk about the difference between a master, well, you said master gardener. Talk about the difference between a master gardener, which is a thing,
So
versus a master gardener or a master grower, which is not really a thing.
master grower is more of a self title, I believe. Master gardeners, those are actually people that have completed gardening courses and accreditations that make them master gardeners. We work with the Mizzou Extension Office, and sometimes we have people come from the Mizzou Extension Office or different universities that are master gardeners that help out with our garden by teaching us stuff, learning about stuff. Maybe we're doing something wrong, we're planting too closely together, companion planting. You can do with cannabis as well, even in a community garden. You could use different plants to grow around your vegetables to keep away pests, like basil, for instance. Basil keeps away pests. You can grow basil next to tomatoes, and your tomatoes will actually have a little bit of a basil flavor. It's kind of interesting. So companion planting like marigolds, how they bring in pollinators. Of course, with cannabis, we don't want a bunch of pollinators, but but with garden vegetables, we definitely want them for the cucumbers and the tomatoes and everything.
Yeah, hopefully you're not growing males, but it's wind pollinated. So if there's any males growing around, those pollinators are not going to be the ones doing the heavy lifting to pollinate those females anyway. But
So
yeah, that achievement of master gardener is no small feat, right? It's quite a bit of work. It's a lot of education. We had a master gardener program at the Denver Botanic Gardens, and a lot of those folks are like very knowledgeable and usually older,
yeah,
been
yep.
gardening their whole life kind of thing.
I've had the pleasure of working with some incredible gardeners. Robert Harris, he was an amazing gardener that was worked with us and taught us a lot of stuff. He was the one that helped. He started the gardens in Cape Girardeau, the community gardens, and we ended up helping him build them up and work on them. It was definitely a pleasure working with him. Different master gardeners have different kinds of. I mean, like I always tell people, there's so many different ways to grow plants, and learning from all these different perspectives and people, it just helps you learn how to be more sustainable, how you can grow your own food and grow your own medicine, and you don't have to depend on chain stores or dispensaries to provide that.
All right. Well, do you have any more passions or research or
I
pet
wanted to
peeves that you want to talk about?
showing these people that these colleges are offering college courses to learn about cannabis, learn about how to grow it, how to become a cultivator, how all different aspects of cannabis. And I think that that is a huge opportunity, especially in an area with this much stigma, to show these young people and older people that they have an opportunity that they can pursue this passion, or maybe this is something they're interested in, because cannabis is going to be the future of us. I mean, we've already learned so much about cannabis, how the medical qualities about it. We can't go backwards anymore. I mean, cannabis has definitely become such a huge part of the country that we're in now. I think that cannabis is going to continue to grow, and we're going to be changing that positive stigma with the college, with this new students, the new generation of people that's coming up, because they see cannabis a whole different way than way we seen it. Because growing up in 2000 or 1995, cannabis was super illegal. I mean, if you had a baggie with a smell in it, you could get arrested for paraphernalia. I mean,
Mm,
that's how strict that shit was back then. I mean, they were
mm.
super strict back in the day. And it's interesting how these kids are learning cannabis in school. And it's amazing. And I think that's going to change things for the future.
I'm 100% there with you. And something that pops into my mind is, cannabis is not just for getting high, right?
No,
It's also an incredible medicine. There are so many compounds that this plant produces that don't get you high. So, even the THC type cannabis, if you don't apply heat to it, as in smoke it or, put it in the oven, it's not going to get you high. So cannabis is an incredibly nutritious food, not just the plant itself, the plant material, the leaves. People love to juice it. It does have a really strong taste, but it's incredibly and like densely nutrient, like all of your leafy greens, right? And then the seeds are super nutritious. They have all of the essential amino acids that we require to put into our diet so that we can fuel our bodies. The seed oil is incredibly nutritious. We've got all these other compounds, like I mentioned, CBD, CBG, that won't get you high. So it's not just for people who want to get high. And there are lots of people that actually don't really like that feeling. I have, you know, um, a formulation Phyto RX, which is a nano emulsion, and it's just a squirt that you put into any beverage or food that delivers, a certain amount of CBD and CBG into your system. We do have an endocannabinoid system, which is the system in your body that governs all the other systems. So your digestive system, your nervous system, and your ECS, your endocannabinoid system, is the thing that is designed to keep your body in balance. So regulating your temperature, that's governed by the ECS. If your temperature is out of whack, the ECS kicks in to tell your body you need to do something to lower or raise your temperature. So if your ECS is not working correctly, you can have all kinds of medical issues, chronic pain and inflammation, headaches, appetite issues. Like there's a bunch of different clinical conditions that don't respond well to any other treatment other than cannabis. And again, it doesn't have to necessarily be the THC type cannabis that's going to whack you out of your gourd, and you don't even need to take that much, but there's other ways, there's other methods to get those cannabinoids into your system that could be incredibly beneficial. And the thing about smoking, some people are like, I don't, I'm not a smoker. I don't want to smoke anything. Again, there are other ways to get those cannabinoids into your system other than smoking. So, and this all comes with education, right? People don't know this stuff. They think that you smoke cannabis and you get high. And that is just one piece of the pie, one piece of the puzzle. There's so much more to cannabis than just smoking pot and getting high. So I feel like the education piece is so incredibly important. And I think that in the certain circumstances that I know about or that I have participated in, people are really receptive and interested and gobsmacked about cannabis when they start to learn that it's not just about smoking weed and getting high.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many benefits to cannabis, from physical to mental aspects of cannabis that benefit people. I mean, for me, I have some stomach issues, and with cannabis, with my IBS, it's incredible how cannabis helps my stomach issues. I can't explain it. I've talked to doctors about it, and it's something about cannabis that it has that property that it does help with stomach issues, and it's incredible. Think about
Mhm.
somebody that has cancer and is going through treatment. They can't eat, they don't want to eat, and they lose energy, and that's something with cannabis that benefits that. People that are sick right now that don't know about these benefits, they're not able to take those opportunities to help them, and that's where that education is great for people that might have cancer, that might have an issue, that they can learn about what things that cannabis can help them.
And I feel like too that, some people are scared. They're
Yeah.
interested, but they're also scared. Like they don't know how to do it. They don't know how much to take, what kind of product they should take. And there are starting to become, various organizations that are offering that help. It can be anonymous. My friend Angela Speakman has an organization called Green Shoulder, and it's kind of like a helpline, where you call in and you can ask questions to with somebody who is an expert, who's not going to judge you, who's going to give you some guidance on whatever you're looking for. So what are your questions? What are your concerns? How can we help you? What are our, recommendations? Things like that, because I feel like, and especially elderly folk, walking into a dispensary is kind of very scary. You've got bright lights, you've got loud music, you've got, kids behind the counter with green hair and tattoos and piercings and stuff. And, to go up to the counter and ask a question about a product is like that you don't want to feel stupid. Like, and there's so many different products. Like just looking at that, wall of different products, like how could you possibly make a decision or anything if you don't know anything about cannabis? And then and again, for elderly folks, like, flour is the quickest method to get it in, but what if you can't light a lighter? Like,
What
and
if you
you
can't
certainly are
roll?
not going to be able to afford or like a dab rig. So what would
Hmm.
be a good product? Edibles are great, tinctures are great. We've got sublinguals, we've got patches, like we got all kinds of stuff. And so, but going into a dispensary and asking those questions, sometimes it's like, well, I'd rather not. I don't, like, I mean, I didn't like it.
Dispensaries, like my experience going to dispensaries, the way that the business model is geared, it's not really geared as much towards the medical side as more of at least here, since it is
Mm.
recreational legal, they're geared more towards like this younger generation, this recreational side, like this is the strongest cannabis, this is super strong, this will get you really, really high, that whole mentality. And just like you said, there's a lot of people that don't want to get crazy high. They maybe just want to relax. Maybe they had a long day. They still need to function because they got kids. I wish dispensaries were more geared towards people's ailments. It seems like when I've been to dispensary, like if you say, hey, I need something for, my back hurts, you know. Well, here's a super strong cannabis that's like 27% THC that if you never smoked before and you're going to smoke this, you're probably going to freak out. It's so strong. You smoke a couple hits of it and you're like, I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. Yeah. My back doesn't hurt, but I don't even or you
Right,
pass the
and
hell
that could
out.
be, yeah, and that could be super off-putting if you think that that's how cannabis is
Yeah,
supposed to be.
and that's where I think a lot of stigma comes from too, as you have people that are trying it, that are getting into it, but it's just so strong what they're pushing mainly to somebody that when you smoke a pre-roll or you have a dab and you're just like, oh wow, this is too much. I did too much. And I've seen that. And that's
Hmm.
where it's neat with growing your own cannabis. You're able to kind of tailor, like ACDC is a strain that's THC and CBD. It's not
Hmm.
super strong. It's not supposed to be super strong. It
Hmm.
has those, like you said, those qualities in it that are for pain, more medical. And that's something that we try to teach too, is that cannabis is more than just getting crazy high. It has a lot of other properties to it.
Yeah, I have a strain that I got from Neverwinter Botanicals, and it is 6% THC and like 12% CBD, and I love it because
Yeah.
it's not, that balance. And it has that balance to the where you're not gonna get that super edgy anxiety, like yucky feeling. It's more of a chill kind of, okay, this is all right kind of
And
feel.
then you can, like when I started smoking again, I quit smoking for some years because of my job that I had. I drove a truck, and when you drive a truck on the highway, you have to take a DOT physical. You can't smoke cannabis, especially back then. And when I quit cannabis for a while and I started back again, I remember like I went to a concert with a buddy and we smoked a joint and I was sitting in the back seat, felt like I was in a rocket ship driving down the interstate because I was so high. Like I was like, oh man, I don't even want to be moving. So
See, and I
the
don't really feel like that's fun.
no, that's too high. It's too much. And
Yeah.
that's where, back in the day, I remember, you get some, Reggie weed or simple, just it wasn't like the strongest weed in the world, but it was enough to give you a buzz, And that was nice for people to get, honestly, that were starting out because you could get an ounce of that for, I don't know, 80, 100 bucks. And it would be enough that I remember when I first started out, I'd only smoke a little bowl or a one hitter. And
Hmm.
that was enough. Just a little bit of that was enough to give me a nice buzz where I could go and I was high for hours. Not everybody has that huge tolerance to cannabis like somebody that smokes every day. And I think that the market that they push really is more towards somebody that smokes every day, or doing dabs every day. I think that the market is different. I think there's a lot of people that really look at cannabis in a different light.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure, like, I'm not sure that having a high tolerance is the flex that people think it is.
No, they're just spending more money.
I know.
you
Like
know,
so much effort and time and money to just get to where you want to be. And then yeah,
it's the
and they,
alcohol same way.
yeah,
I mean, I
but
remember dudes that they could drink a whole bottle of whiskey in a night. It's like, well, that sucks. I mean, a bottle of whiskey lasts me a year,
yeah,
or more,
expensive
I
date.
mean, yeah, like it lasts me a long time. That's
But the thing
crazy.
about alcohol is it doesn't really have any therapeutic effects. It's just pure
No,
detrimental. I mean, unless you need it to relax or something like that. But yeah, having a super high tolerance is, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
no, I'm right there with you. I completely agree. Huh?
What about the proposed Schedule 3 change or
So yeah, the hemp ban, that's very interesting that they're doing where they're changing it to
in
Schedule
the
3.
definition? So the Schedule
And
3 is one thing, and that's removing THC type cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And then there's the proposed hemp definition word changes.
so that's
Those,
a big deal with home growers because of the seed lingo in that law. And that's something that is, I'm glad you brought that up because people like me that are home growers, it has been a pleasure to be able to have access to so many genetics and phenotypes to grow. I mean, it's like a kid in a candy store. Back in the day, I mean, we were lucky if we had two or three strains, you know. So it was nice to have access to different kinds of kush or different kinds of skunk or different kinds of cannabis plants that are different, like Humboldt's phenotypes, you know, and different stuff like that. And I'm afraid with this hemp ban that they're trying to do, it's going to limit people access to be able to buy the cannabis seeds because according to the law that they're proposing is that cannabis plants that have the seeds that have the capability of growing a plant that has
Hmm.
over zero point 0.3 THC is illegal. So those
Hmm.
seeds will not be able to be sold. And that is something that is a big fear for a lot of people with cannabis. I do believe that it won't stop cannabis because cannabis was illegal, super illegal in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s. And people were still getting seeds and growing cannabis.
Right. And you're gonna have like you will still, if you're in a legal state, you will be able to purchase THC type cannabis seeds potentially in dispensaries, but there will be no interstate commerce. Like you won't be able to order your seeds online. It will basically cripple not just the hemp industry, which it largely runs on seeds, but and I'm talking like the actual hemp industry, which we already have to have like a paper trail of this is a hemp seed. Here's the COA. Here's the seedsman's license. There are lists if you're in the hemp industry. Your state will generally have a list of approved genetics and prohibited genetics, like that will go hot. But like the whole marijuana industry relies on seeds as well. And to now classify all seeds as marijuana, it it's going to shut all of that down, and that will limit genetic. Your state will have what your state has, right? So there, where are they going to get any kind of variety? It's just going to be terrible. I mean, they haven't said anything about clones or tissue culture, which I guess is good, but it's so stupid to me. We don't, you can buy poppy seeds at the grocery store. You can take those poppy seeds home. You can plant them in the ground. You can make, you can milk those opium poppies if you want, and you can make morphine if you, well, you're not allowed to make morphine, but like you can milk that poppy and that's not regulated in that there's nothing that's regulated like this, and it's so stupid. The potential for something to become something else is so dumb.
And here in Missouri, they just got hammered. The dispensaries did over that same deal. What you were talking about, that immaculate conception, where the seeds have to come from the state. And there was a couple cultivation facilities here in Missouri that I read on the news recently, and I'm not going to say their names, but they were popped with a fine because they were bringing in genetics from out of state, which I don't blame them. Why wouldn't you bring in? I mean, because cannabis was never naturally found here in Missouri, anyways. I mean, it was all imported from somewhere else.
Hmm.
So they were bringing in different genetics, and they got fined. I think it was like $500,000 for
It's so
bringing in Gen X. Ain't that crazy? And and that's where that whole hemp thing came from. Was the other end of the spectrum is THCA. THCA dispensaries that are selling cannabis in these different, THC dispensaries, or Delta 8 or CBD or whatever. Those dispensaries are selling THCA, which, as you just said, is what cannabis is before you add heat to it.
it's just
That's
regular weed.
that's all cannabis,
Right.
and they tried to use that loophole, in which they were successful for a while, but now they close that loophole. But the way that the government closed that loophole could close the loophole for home growing, and that's super scary because if you can't get different genetics in the state, do you think that dispensary is going to sell you their genetics? Absolutely not. They are not going to share that with you because that's all they can sell. They can't get any other genetics in from another state. So say they have GMO cookies that they bred and made here in Missouri, that's theirs. They're going to sell it as an autoflower plant, or not a plant. They're not going to sell it to you as a seed or a clone that you can grow yourself because they're not making money off that.
It's just a mess all around, and we are right to your congressmen, your senators, write, letters, make phone calls because this is really bad. So we've hopefully got a little bit of time before they make decisions on whether they're going to change that language or not. But honestly, these folks that have been operating in the, THCA hemp and the hemp derived products, like I understand where that need came from and why they were so successful in it. And I know that a lot of people made a lot of money and were very successful. But on the other hand, they knew what they were doing. They knew
Yeah,
that this was a loophole and that it wasn't going
it's
to last forever. So I do feel bad
yeah,
that people that went into business and are now potentially going to lose that business. That sucks. But on the other hand, they knew, you know?
yeah, yeah. They knew
It
that
wasn't
they
going to
were
be a
getting
free
away
ride
with.
forever.
Yeah, I mean, like you'd go to events and they'd be selling cannabis just like a vendor selling cookies, and you're just like, if this was 20 years ago, they would all be in jail. Like, there's no way that would be allowed. And that
Hmm.
loophole, they use that loophole because they were able to. But these cannabis companies, cultivators, dispensaries, I don't blame them for being upset that these businesses were open because it's
Hmm.
not fair. They, like I just said, that company got fined $500,000 because they brought in genetics. I can go to a THA store down the road and they got cannabis from California that they brought here. That's not legal. That's completely not legal. And they know that. And like you said, that loophole is closing and they made their money when they could, but
I mean, you can buy it on the internet and have it delivered to your house. So,
that's crazy.
all that's going to go away. And for people who live in a state where it's not legal, like Texas, for example, that's a good example. You can't buy, there's no dispensaries, there's no adult use, there's no barely any medical. But there are still people in Texas that require cannabis for various medical conditions. They can purchase it through the mail. They can go to a hemp store and get THCA hemp. And I have a friend who uses it she's very ADHD, but she's like, "What is it?" I'm like, "It's just weed." She's like, "But it's not legal here." I'm like, "There, I'll explain the loophole to you." All she wanted to know is like, "What is it?" And I'm like, "It's just regular old weed." And so, yeah, she got some. She's like, "This is just weed." I'm like, "I know. That's exactly what it is."
They just using the loophole for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel bad for patients that will no longer have access to what they need because using that loophole has opened that market up to them. But
Yes.
on the same hand, anybody who thought that that was going to fly forever is delusional.
Yeah, they regulate cannabis. I mean, the government's regulating it. And here's where my mindset is about cannabis. I remember when it was illegal. I'm super thankful that it's legal now, that you can't even purchase it from a dispensary. I'm thankful that I can purchase a medical license and grow it at my house. Something that we weren't able to do. And I was part of that coalition that signed up those names to get that on the ballot, to get that voted here in Missouri. I was part of that going around getting those signatures. And I know how hard it was to get it on the ballot and how hard it was. We barely passed. I think it was only a few percent over 50 that made it win. And if you think about it, that could have very easily went the other way. And the stigma behind cannabis, selling it in open air markets like that, or doing it without any COAs or any kind of testing. You see cannabis sold at gas stations, you know, THCA. That
Hmm.
that's I mean, is that safe? Is that gummy safe? Do you know what was put in it? A lot of
Hmm.
times they don't know. And
Hmm.
that's where I do believe in regulation. I think regulation is good because just like the FDA, I don't want to buy food and eat food that's treated with some weird pesticide that they got cheaper because they got away with it. I don't want to put that in my body because
Right.
that's going to make me sick, you know?
Potentially, yeah. And you know what a lot of people don't understand, and why would they, is that, these hemp products that are in your smoke shops and vape shops and stuff like that, they're not regulated. They're not required to be tested. And a lot of those products are actually failed products from the regulated market that was supposed to be destroyed because it failed whatever,
Yes.
microbials or heavy metals, toxins,
Heavy
pesticides.
metals.
whatever, and they failed. It's supposed to be destroyed, but instead they've relabeled it as hemp, shipped it out the back door, and are selling it on, through these stores. So incredibly not safe. And
No.
people don't understand that. So, I say buyer beware. If you're going to purchase these things, just know that you're rolling the dice. If you get sick or you feel sick, there's probably a reason for that. Even with the concentrates, the vapes, things like that, the edibles, there could be residual solvents in there, unknown byproducts that we don't know what they do. So just be really cautious when you're purchasing these off-brand products because they're not all safe. Just because it's being sold doesn't mean it's been tested, doesn't yet. It's a totally
Well,
unregulated Wild West.
in the packaging, people look at the packaging, they're like, "Oh, that package looks really good. It must be tested." And I'm like, they just bought the package. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
Tommy Boy, when he was at the brake pad shop and he's like, it doesn't have a guarantee. He goes, you can take a shit in a box. It's still a piece of shit with a guarantee. It does. It's just a package. It just looks good.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, all right. Well, we've had a great conversation. It's been wonderful to have you on my show. If people need to get a hold of you, want to get a hold of you, talk to you about your nonprofit, join the community garden, take classes, how do they get a hold of you? Where are you at? Give us
Um,
your infos.
We're online at www.buttheads with a Z growersclub.com, or you can look up if you want to check out my soil at buttheads.com. And either one of those platforms, you can message me. We're on social media too. Currently, we're banned on Facebook because I was teaching people about how to grow cannabis and they don't really like that.
You're
Banned me
also
on
on LinkedIn,
I'm
right?
on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I do a TikTok show. If you guys ever want to watch some funny TikToks, I'm always in the community garden. Just look for the guy saying, "Hey, Butthead's here." I'm always on there doing stuff. So
All right, great. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom and your enthusiasm for, the community, for the people, for everything. So it's
thank
been a
you.
great conversation.
Thank you, Anna. It's been great. I've enjoyed it.
All right. Awesome. Well, have a good rest of your day. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks,
See ya.
Eric. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.